This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. A warning to our listeners and viewers. Again, this next segment includes graphic details. Patrol dogs are terrorizing and mauling prisoners inside the United States. That's the headline to a shocking new investigation by Insider. The report reveals prison patrol dogs have attacked at least 295 U.S. prisoners since 2017. Many prisoners were attacked by dogs while face down or in leg irons. Several men said officers shouted racial slurs as dogs bit into their flesh. The Insider report's accompanied by videos of men who describe how they were attacked. This is Linwood Mathias, a patrol dog bit him at Red Onion State Prison in 2017 in Virginia.
It was just an altercation that took place and, an incident that happened. So when they ordered for everybody to get on the ground, everybody complied. Then the dogs come in the pod, and I'm the only one that got attacked by the dog. I was already sedated, I was non-violent, and I was in compliance with every direction that was given to me. And I still got bit, and the dog was on my leg for a long period of time with my leg way up in the air, just chewing on it.
Linwood Mathias is featured in the new report by Hannah Beckler, investigations editor for Insider. On Wednesday, I spoke with Hannah, and we were joined by another man, Xavia Goodwyn, who was formerly incarcerated in Virginia, attacked by a dog also at Red Onion State Prison in 2015. I began by asking Hannah to lay out her findings and talk about the connection between the use of prison dogs in the U.S. prisons and at Abu Ghraib, the notorious U.S. military prison in Iraq where prisoners were tortured.
Thanks so much for having me. So, in Abu Ghraib, U.S. military dogs were introduced in November 2003, and their involvement in the abuse of detainees started almost immediately. Now, the roots of this program really originated in the United States, both at Guantanamo Bay and at state correctional systems. So there were 8 private contractors who were hired by the U.S. government to select the site, rebuild Abu Ghraib, train staff, and generally advise the Iraqi correctional system. All 8 of these men were former high-level prison administrators in state systems. And all 8 of these men were responsible for launching, administering, or expanding programs in the U.S. that used attack-trained dogs in the 80s and 90s to attack or terrify people who are incarcerated.
Explain who these corrections, if you could even refer to it as, commissioners are. I mean, these were the top guys from Utah, from Arizona, from Connecticut, well, tell us.
Sure. So they were correctional, as you said, commissioners or directors from Arizona, Utah, Connecticut, and Massachusetts. One of the major figures was Lane McCotter. He started the patrol dog program first in New Mexico in 1988 and then moved on to administer a similar program in Utah. Gary DeLand was also the director of the Utah state system. He started a special operations team in Utah in the late 80s that used attack-trained dogs for cell extractions, which is the forcible removal of a man in their cell by sending an attack-trained dog into the cell to attack them.
And to be clear, all of these men who ran these prison systems were forced out by lawsuits or political controversy, like women who were raped in the prisons or a person who died as a result of torture there.
Yes. In fact, there was a 2005 Office of the Investigative General report that scrutinized the background of these private contractors because of these human rights abuses that followed them from the 80s and 90s before they were ever sent to Iraq to administer these programs in Abu Ghraib. So it's fairly shocking that the U.S. federal government even contracted these men.
And so talk about what happened back in the United States, because your report goes right through to now.
Yes, so many of these programs, Utah discontinued it, but Connecticut, Massachusetts, Arizona, among 5 other states now continue to use attack-trained dogs either as a show force. So what this means is that they are using the dogs to bark, to growl, to terrify people who are incarcerated into compliance, or to attack them. So in Virginia, for example, it's the extreme outlier. 271 men have been attacked by these patrol dogs since 2017.
So give us examples of what happened in prisons and the use of these patrol dogs to terrorize.
So in Virginia specifically, the dogs are deployed almost as a routine use of force. So what this means is they might be used when there's a fight that happens in one of these prisons, and the dogs are called into the cell block to bark, to terrify, and then to attack the men who are involved in those altercations. In other instances, they're involved in what's called a planned use of force, so again, a cell extraction. So I have records of many men who were refusing to leave their cells, and the correction officers sent 1 or sometimes even 2 dogs into the cell to attack the men where they had nowhere to run.
And talk about what happens afterwards.
These attacks are severe. As you said, they're sometimes permanently disfiguring and disabling. At least 18 men I identified had to be hospitalized for the sheer force and brutality of these attacks. It's puncture wounds, it's crush injuries, sometimes it results in septic infections, which is life-threatening. But what I have been told many times from these men who are attacked is the psychological impact is also incredibly severe. Many experience panic attacks, nightmares, intrusive thoughts, and other symptoms that are consistent with post-traumatic stress disorder months or even years after the attack. Even those folks who witness these attacks say that it's devastating. They also suffer nightmares afterwards. I spoke to corrections officers who similarly say that witnessing the blood, the screaming, the sheer sense of terror is primal, is what they told me, and incredibly traumatizing, something that they have to live with for, again, months and years afterwards.
And can you talk about the dogs being attacked while the guard is spewing racial slurs at the prisoner? And then talk about the history of the use of attack dogs and racial attacks.
I spoke to several historians who told me that the use of dogs as a weaponization of dogs has a long and racist history in the United States, whether these dogs were being deployed against indigenous people for acts of genocide, whether they were employed on plantations to brutally enforce slavery, all the way through to 1963 Birmingham, for example, with those iconic photographs of German shepherds being sicked against teenagers. Now we're seeing them deployed in a prison environment, and the same sort of racist connotations are happening. I spoke to several men, at least 7, who allege either in court filings or in interviews with me that they were subjected to racist abuse, racist slurs, threats, either during or immediately after their attacks. This could be, again, racial epithets, but it also can be threats such as, my dog loves dark meat.
We're talking to Hannah Beckler, who just did this chilling investigation for Insider called Patrol Dogs Are Terrorizing and Mauling Prisoners Inside the United States. We're also joined by Xavia Goodwyn, featured in this new Insider investigation. He filed a civil complaint that a corrections officer at the Red Onion, Virginia State Prison held him down and repeatedly called him the N-word as a dog was attacking him in December of 2015. Xavia, I am so horrified that this happened to you. Thank you very much for joining us from Richmond. Can you lay out what happened to you?
That morning, there was an altercation in the pod. As to where I came on my cell and I busted another inmate in the head. And it just went up between the inmates. When the staff was called, they came in, and it just came in hot. Now I get it that I was like one of the last that was on my feet, but at the time when he engaged his canine, I was in a prone position. I was compliant. That's when the officer came in and he sprayed me while I was already down. When he sprayed me, everything just went mayhem. They was on me, twisting my my legs, my arms, behind my back, putting handcuffs and shackles on me. While I was down, he picked the K9 up and placed him on my back. And after that, then they was taking me out of the vestibule, and I feel the momentum like pick up as they walking me, because it's one on each side. And he ran my head into the steel frame of the door and held my head up against the door.
So the dog, you said the dog came at you, and what did he do to your right leg?
He bit it. He bit it. Several times. I mean, the mark's still there. I wore shorts to prove it.
And when did he stop? When did they pull the dog away?
You know, this is the second time he engaged the dog on me. This time I was already in handcuffs and shackles when he put it on my right leg. He probably held on for maybe 10 seconds, something like that. Oh, 10 seconds. He got me for about 10 seconds, but he bit me twice in 10 seconds.
And just to be clear, did you say at the beginning that they put a dog on your back?
Yes, ma'am. He placed him on my back. You can see it in the video. It's in the video that they played in court.
And when you were laying down on your stomach, they put the dog on your back.
He lifted him up and placed him on my back. Literally, lift him up. Like grabbed him under his belly and put him on my back. Like basically like telling him what to do, making him do it.
And what did the dog do?
He didn't bite me, but he snipped at my face. He snipped at my face, but I think what saved my face was he had already sprayed me. But being that the CO had already sprayed me, I guess the dog wasn't going around it.
So you mean like pepper sprayed or maced you?
Yeah, pepper spray. Yeah, pepper spray.
Oh.
It was pepper spray.
It was even too much for the dog.
Absolutely.
So that was the beginning, them putting the dog on your back. And then they took you, slammed you against the bars. Your head is against the bars. And was it the same dog they brought up who then bit your right leg?
That part is unclear. That part is unclear. They never gave me the video from the vestibule, and they edited the handheld camera. So right when the camera started rolling is when we in the vestibule.
Xavia, you tried to sue?
Absolutely. Absolutely. My case was, I appealed too. My case, it was, he ruled in favor of the defendants. The thing with that I don't understand is that during trial, I repeatedly made sure I got things on transcript that they were saying. So I asked, so me and the judge was talking about it, and he said, Mr. Goodwyn, there's no doubt in my mind that they violated policy. He said, I'm trying to see if they violated your constitutional rights as well. But Virginia Department of Correction policies is governed by your constitutional rights. So if they violate one, they violate both.
So you were upset that the Virginia Attorney General didn't defend you, but defended those who sicked the dog on you.
He an officer of the law, absolutely. I told him that in court. He an officer of the law. It's on transcript. I told him that in court. I said, man, you're an officer of the law, man. How you gonna defend what they did? When you see it, it's on tape. So, absolutely. I felt some type of way.
Hannah Beckler, when you heard Xavia's description of what happened to him, can you fit this into the context of what you've heard from other prisoners? How typical is this horror?
I think it's very typical. Frankly, Xavia describes being compliant, being spread eagle on the floor. Many of the men I spoke with described that this is what they had done. They were flat on the ground, face down, arms out, because again, they're so terrified of these dogs, they don't want to be attacked. So even after they've attempted to demonstrate full compliance, the animal is still commanded to attack them. So for Xavia, the idea that the dog was lifted and placed onto his back and it bit his left leg, and then they removed the dog and he was bit again on his right leg. It's shocking, but I don't think it's necessarily an outlier or something that's uncommon.
Xavia, you, I'm sure, have seen video of police attacking civil rights activists with dogs, like in Birmingham, the children in 1963. Your thoughts?
I think the same thing still going on today, just in a different way. You understand what I'm saying? I just sent Ms. Beckler something yesterday from off CNN. I was looking at CNN and seeing something similar. The dude was complying and they still released the dog on him. So yeah, I mean, it's still going on, man.
Xavia, that's really important what you raised. I mean, you're talking about the story of the video that was just released about a truck driver.
Absolutely.
He was black, right? It was
Absolutely.
Ohio. And when he got out of the truck, they said you have to have your hands above your head, behind your head. And he had them high above his head. So he was in a very vulnerable position. No one thought that he was a threat. And you see behind him a policeman unleash a dog, even as other police or troopers are saying, do not release that dog. And a woman police officer who looks horrified and is walking away as he is being attacked, mauled by this dog.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. Absolutely.
As we begin to wrap up, Hannah Beckler, what have you found? What states forbid the use of dogs, and what's happening in these states where they are used so aggressively, where so many people, I mean, in the past years, hundreds of people have been purposely bitten?
I think what's most startling about the use of dogs in correctional settings is there's no academic study that assesses the efficacy of using these dogs, so it's all over the place in terms of the policies and how they're employed in these different state systems. So you have a system like Massachusetts, for example, where we documented 3 dog attacks in 2020 at Susan Baranowski. Their policy is that the actual corrections commissioner is supposed to grant permission every time an attack-trained dog is entering the facility. So you have that kind of direct accountability chain. In contrast to Virginia, for example, where 271 people were attacked by dogs as a routine use of force. And then New Jersey, for example, have not used dogs to attack anyone, but they're still weaponizing terror by using the dogs to, again, terrify with barking and snarling dogs, people who are incarcerated, to force them into compliance. Now, I know that Utah, for example, has stopped using these dogs for use of force, so that does happen. Massachusetts and Arizona, both independently at one point, decided to stop using dogs. They have since reintroduced using dogs. So it is a very interesting occurrence. Most of the corrections officers and corrections administrators that I've spoken to argue that using dogs make facilities safer for both staff and prisoners alike. However, again, because these dogs are indiscriminately aggressive, we're also seeing attacks on correction officers and other prison staff.
And finally, Xavia, what message do you have to share with people around the country and around the world?
It's still going on in the western region of Virginia. Absolutely. It's real heavy up there. Still going on up there.
Xavia Goodwyn was attacked by a dog in 2015 at Red Onion State Prison in Wise County, Virginia, near the town of Pound. Thanks also to Hannah Beckler, investigations editor for Insider. We'll link to her new investigation. Patrol dogs are terrorizing and mauling prisoners inside the United States. That does it for our show. Democracy Now! Is currently accepting applications for paid internships in our archive and development departments. Learn more and apply at democracynow.org. Oh, at our website, you can also sign up for our daily news digest email, or you can text the word Democracy Now!, that's one word, no space, to 66866. That's the word Democracy Now!, one word. Text it to 66866. You can watch and listen to Democracy Now! When you want by subscribing to our podcasts in English and Spanish. Find them wherever you get your podcasts today. And visit our website to see our extended interview with atomic bomb historian Greg Mitchell on the new film Oppenheimer, as well as our interviews in English and Spanish with the great novelist Isabel Allende about her new book, The Wind Knows My Name. I'm Amy Goodman. Thanks so much for joining us for another edition of Democracy Now!